and welcome to this review of my Modelflabs B104 Round 2 beamspring keyboard. This was another donation from Joe. I've covered quite a few of his keyboards on the channel by now. He's most well known for making reproductions of Model F keyboards, but after that he decided to tackle beamsprings as well. He brought out the first round of keyboards a while ago, but now he's back and made a bunch of significant changes, most obviously in the looks department, which is a good thing because that first round looked somewhat boring. This one is much better looking in my opinion. It has a more classic beamspring-like look to it, and I even sent in some case measurements of original beamspring keyboards for him to use in designing this. This is the full-size version, but it also does 60%, TKL, and even Battleship versions of this keyboard. Now, like I said, he's normally more known for his reproductions, but this isn't really a reproduction, to be honest. It's more of a spiritual successor or something, because instead of just copying old designs, this time he made some genuinely new stuff. As mentioned, he designed new cases, but especially the switches have seen quite a few updates. I'll talk more about that in a bit. First off, what are beamsprings and why would you want them? So before IBM's famous Model M and Model F buckling spring keyboards, they used to manufacture Model B beamspring keyboards. These used a quite different switch design to operate, though they were still capacitive. They were based on discrete switches rather than a shared barrel plate with sets of springs and flippers in them like with buckling springs. IBM originally moved off of these beamspring switches for mainly two reasons. First of all, to save on keyboard height, because as you can see, the switches are quite tall, and so is the keyboard. It's slightly taller than my fist. And second, to save money. Buckling springs featured a greatly simplified switch design, and so they were much cheaper to manufacture than these beamsprings. I've reviewed several original beamspring keyboards before, such as the 3278, this 5251, and the 4987, which is colloquially known as the Beamship for its humongous size. Now, the truth of these is that the switches are easily the best I've ever typed on. I mean, it's so good that you just wouldn't believe it. But being so old, they come with a few limitations, such as antiquated layouts, extreme keyboard height, etc. I mean, all things to be expected from keyboards from the 70s for sure, but it's pretty obvious when viewed from a modern perspective. With this new series, Joe sought to merge the beamspring switch design with the conveniences of a modern keyboard. Simple USB protocol, good proven keyboard layouts, greatly reduced keyboard height, programmability, and several others I get to in a moment. It's a great opportunity to merge what's arguably the nicest switch in history with the things we expect in a keyboard today. So a long time ago, I did a teardown of the Round 1 version of these new beamspring switches, and he made several changes to them. Most notably, he managed to reduce the switch height compared to the original without changing any of the dimension of the actual working parts. It's just an efficiency thing, basically. Plus, he changed the beamspring's proprietary keycap mount to MX mount, which a lot of people are going to appreciate as well. Later, he improved his design by changing the way that the switches held together. In Round 1, it used a sort of metal ring that was glued and then pressure fitted, but for Round 2 he changed that for an MX mount small plastic retainer, which seems to work a lot better. It's easier to get off if you wanted to, yet sturdy enough to remain in place if you don't. I can tell just from this sample from the Round 1 switches that I got that the metal retainers are very bad once you've taken them off once, so this is a big improvement. He also changed the way the switches are manufactured as well as the QC on them. For the first round, he actually had to do a bunch of manual adjustments afterwards himself, but that's not necessary with the current iteration. The travel distance was also changed. I noticed that they felt like they had a different throw compared to the originals, so I measured it, and the IBM made beamsprings have 4mm travel, while these Round 2 ones have 4.5, and the Round 1 have as much as 5mm of travel. Possibly as a result of all these differences, the sound appears to have changed significantly as well. The naked switch noise, so to speak, has gotten considerably more high-pitched. Listen to this. So, what does that actually feel like? Well, the tactility is absolutely delicious. It's not super strong or anything, but very sharp, giving it an extremely satisfying, crisp key feel. I think the tactility is actually slightly better than that of the original, as it has just a little bit more bite to it, which is nice. So that's a huge compliment right there. Smoothness-wise, however, it's a noticeable step back. The switches are uniformly a lot rougher than the originals, and even than the Round 1 switch, which surprised me a lot. Now, granted, I only have a single loose Round 1 switch, and it's not even mounted, so it's hard to gauge for sure, but the loose Round 2 switches appear to feel noticeably scratchier than the Round 1 ones. Most tellingly though, the difference in smoothness between the IBM and this one is significant. The IBM feels almost frictionless, as you can probably also make out from this force curve, whereas these Round 2 switches have a noticeable amount of scratch to them. Now, of course, we're not talking Cherry MX Brown here or anything crazy like that, but it's definitely there. And to be honest, I like them better than buckling springs, which should put this a bit into perspective, but that friction really kind of mystifies me a bit, because from what I can tell, it doesn't appear to be present in the Round 1 switch, and definitely not on the IBMs. So I asked Joe if he knew what was going on with this, but he just quoted me a bunch of positive reviews and told me I should go and do an objective review incorporating other people's opinions, instead of just saying what I think, which feels like a rather strange response, frankly. I'm not sure what he was thinking when he said that. Now, of course, maybe it's just that I'm crazy and all the other reviewers are completely right and there's no friction in this keyboard at all, but it's just what I feel, really. He also mentioned that it might be due to a breaking in period, but frankly I don't buy that at all. Even on other switch types I've never really seen good evidence for this. I mean, if that were the case, then the key feel on the IBM should be all over the place, right? But it isn't. It's super uniform across both my beamspring boards, and still uniformly scratchy across this new one despite 2 weeks of use. Plus, nobody else mentioned any break-in periods affecting their board, so I really don't think it's that. But still, I'd like to stress that these are really good switches and I thoroughly recommend them. It's just that I'm holding them to the standard of what I consider to be the best switches ever made. Now, one advantage that these beamspring switches have over the Model F keyboards that he made before is that these are easier to replace and repair, as they consist of discrete units rather than being loose flippers in a shared clamped assembly like the Model F. All you need to do is take out the bolts holding the case open, then take out the ones holding the chassis together, and then you can easily mess with them, so you can just take them out like so. I mean, granted, it's not exactly a hot swap socket or anything, but it's far easier than it was on the Model F. That said, Joe mentioned that the on-arrival defects, which were a well-known thing on the Model F, appear to be far less common here than they are in the buckling spring models. I don't have any numbers or anything, but it's nice to hear. My unit arrived with no defects of any kind, though it's important to know that mine is personally inspected, comes with the keycaps pre-installed, and it's also double boxed, unlike commercial models. I asked him why he doesn't do that for other units, but apparently the added cost for that is prohibitive, especially intercontinentally. He says it makes more economic sense for him to send replacement parts out of his own pockets than to increase the shipping fees for double boxing. Anyway, the on-arrival defects still happen with these, but apparently less frequently, and when they do, they're much easier to address. Plus, the keyboards ship with 4 free replacement switches, just in case. So if this is what was holding you back from buying an F, maybe a Beamer is a good alternative for you. In any case, as always, if you're on the fence about the prospect of potential day one maintenance, it's wise to look up some other user experiences and reviews from other community members that didn't get a curated unit like mine. Let's move on to the build quality and shit. I mean, we're 23 scenes in and I haven't even talked about that stuff yet. The outer case is made out of powder-coated plate aluminium, 2mm thick, and the chassis is plate steel, giving the keyboard an immense heft of just over 4 kilos, or in imperial units, it feels absolutely massive, the kind of keyboard that would damage your floor if you dropped it rather than the other way around, and it's clearly very well built. The case is still a bit tall, even if it's only about half the height of the originals, so for some people it might be good to get a wrist rest to compensate for the increased typing angle. Personally, it didn't really bother me, but I can imagine that it's unergonomic for some users. Of course, I also had the optional solenoid installed, which makes a mechanical sound every time you press a key, though it can be toggled on or off with function space T. This one just hammers sideways into the air, but on some other models I installed it in such a way that it was actually hammering against the case. But even in this, guys, it's super loud. It's probably at this point that I should mention that the cable isn't readily detachable. You have to take the case off and then you can take it out of the PCB. But it is possible, I guess. The keycaps are double-shot PBT with cylindrical tops. They're from some unknown brand, probably quite cheap, though it makes sense to be honest. Personally, I think these look quite good, but being MX mount, you can swap them for another set if you want. It's $40 for a monochrome set and $50 for a two-tone one like this, which is not a lot, and it's optional anyway, so if you want to stick on your own keycaps, you can just leave this out of the package. Please note that ISO sets only come as a sort of generic ISO, so the key here isn't included. Originally he stuck the spare tilde key on it, but that's the wrong profile, so it stuck out. So instead I put this pipe key on, which obviously doesn't do what it says on it either, but at least it's the right profile. As always, you can order a metric fuckton of other optional extras with this keyboard, including spare switches, controllers, custom serial numbers, etc. There's also a bunch of different case and keycap color options, mainly beige, black, blue, red, and industrial grey, which is the case on my unit. Originally, I thought about getting a Mopar blue set like this for some of the keys, but that's not one of the options actually, and to be honest, I think in hindsight, this was the correct choice for colors personally. Frankly, I'd say it looks absolutely fucking gorgeous in this color scheme. The board is programmable with Vial, it's easy to use and very convenient. At this point it's probably also good to mention that the keyboard is capacitive, so it features inherent N-key rollover, which is nice, no diodes needed, though it does retain a 6-key rollover mode for BIOS compatibility. Base cost for the keyboard is $400 without keycaps. This one in two-tone ISO with solenoid is about $100 more. It's, well, expensive, but hey, it's a modern beamspring keyboard. What else is there to say? It's amazing. Joe did a great job recreating and most importantly improving this concept, and I think it came out very well. Like I said, the switches feel a little bit less smooth than the originals, but I actually like the tactility a little bit better, so it's a dream to type on in my opinion. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a double typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard, one with the solenoid on and one with it turned off.